The Supra didn't start as its own model. In 1978, it was the Celica Supra, Toyota's direct answer to the Nissan 240Z, built by stretching the Celica chassis 5.1 inches to fit a longitudinal inline-six where the four-cylinder used to sit. Toyota looked at what Nissan had built and decided to out-engineer it. The sizing difference was deliberate. The Nissan Z used a 2,393cc engine. Toyota fitted the 4ME at 2,562cc, intentionally larger, intentionally making more torque, intentionally making clear this was not a copy. The Celica name was kept for one reason: to leverage Celica's existing brand recognition in markets where the Supra had none. The 4ME produced 110 horsepower with Bosch L Jetronic fuel injection, electronic fuel injection that most Japanese rivals weren't offering. The suspension was fully independent at all four corners, at a time when most competitors still ran a solid rear axle. It was a Grand Tourer, not a sports car, and Toyota was specific about the distinction. The transmission was the W58 5-speed manual, a gearbox Toyota developed specifically for the Supra's torque and rev range. The W58 would outlast every engine it was ever paired with. It became so sought after by the tuning community that examples are still being pulled from junkyards today to build into two JZ-swapped project cars. In 1979, the A50 arrived with a 3-inch longer wheelbase than the A40, improving high-speed stability without changing the visual character. In 1981, the A40 became the first production car in the world to offer an onboard navigation computer, a system so ahead of its time that Toyota had to explain in the owner's manual what navigation meant. The longitudinal engine layout established in 1978 would define every Supra built over the next 50 years. Every engineering decision made during the A40 program, the inline-six, the longitudinal placement, the rear-wheel drive was carried forward without exception into every generation that followed. In 1982, the A60 arrived with pop-up headlights, a wedge body, and a two-trim split, the L-type for comfort and the P-type for drivers, with flared fenders, 14-inch wheels, and a limited slip differential standard. The design language was uncompromised 1980s wedge, every surface angled forward. The 5MGE engine grew to 2.8 liters and 145 horsepower, but what most people don't know is that Toyota contracted Lotus to tune the independent rear suspension geometry, not inspired by Lotus, not consulting Lotus. Toyota hired Lotus, and they showed up, worked the geometry, and left their fingerprints on every corner of the chassis. In select markets, a turbocharged variant of the A60 was offered with a 2.8-liter turbo engine, producing closer to 180 horsepower. This version is rarely mentioned because production numbers were low and distribution was limited, but it established that the A60 chassis could handle forced induction, which mattered for what came next. The 1985 Special Edition closed out the A60 run with upgraded interior trim, a limited color palette, and equipment combinations that weren't available in standard spec. The drag coefficient across the entire A60 lineup came in at 0.34, lower than several European supercars built the same year, achieved with pen, paper, and a wind tunnel. The Lotus suspension contract and the 0.34 drag coefficient were documented in Toyota's own engineering reports. Neither was a marketing claim. In 1986, the Celica name was dropped. The A70 became simply the Supra. No prefix, no qualifier, no apology. The turbocharged 7M GTE produced 230 horsepower and introduced TEMs, Toyota's first electronically modulated suspension, adjusting damper stiffness in real time. This was 1986. The 7M GTE had one documented weakness: the head gasket. Under sustained boost, the factory head bolts didn't provide enough clamping force, leading to blown gaskets on high-mileage cars. Toyota never issued a recall. The community fixed it with aftermarket head studs. The block itself was never the problem. The fasteners were. The cooling system for the A70 Turbo used a water-to-air intercooler rather than the air-to-air setup that most turbocharged cars used at the time. Water-to-air intercoolers are heavier but respond faster and perform better in stop-and-go conditions. Toyota chose performance over simplicity, and the weight penalty was accepted. Japan's bubble economy gave Toyota engineers a blank check. The top-spec A70 came with four-wheel steering, a viscous LSD, and electronically controlled suspension at a price competitive with European sports machinery. The 0 to 60 time of 6.1 seconds in 1987 was enough to embarrass a base Corvette, which needed 6.5. In 1990, the Japan-only JZA70 raised the stakes with the 1JZ GTE 2.5 twin-turbo, officially rated at 280 horsepower, to comply with the gentleman's agreement, the informal pact where no Japanese automaker would publicly claim more. Real-world dyno tests of the period consistently measured output between 310 and 320 horsepower. The JZA70 was produced for only 3 years, from 1990 to 1993, making it significantly rarer than the standard A70. The A80 took 4 years to develop and involved more than 200 engineers working across 3 continents: Europe for high-speed testing, Japan for the core chassis and powertrain, and the United States for market validation. The brief was simple: build a car that could compete with European sports cars on every metric. The budget matched the brief. The engine was the 2JZ GTE, cast iron block, 7 main bearings, sequential twin turbos, 320 horsepower in export trim, 0-60 in 4.6 seconds. During development, the A80 was tested at 177 miles per hour on the Autobahn. Toyota used Germany's unrestricted highways as a proving ground because Japan had no equivalent facility. The front suspension used double wishbone geometry derived directly from Toyota's experience developing the MR2. The chassis was the first Toyota production car to use a front subframe isolated by hydraulic-controlled bushings, a technology borrowed from Formula One to reduce NVH at high speed without compromising handling precision. The A80 was the first Toyota sports car to ship with a 6-speed manual gearbox, a Getrag 233 developed jointly with the German manufacturer specifically for the 2JZ's torque output. 6-speed manuals were rare in 1993. Most competitors were still offering 5. Toyota went to Getrag, and Getrag delivered. The block was engineered with structural margins so large that tuners reached 500 horsepower without touching the internals, 1,000 horsepower with only a turbo swap, and some documented builds have exceeded 2,000. Total export production of the A80 was 11,239 units, a number rarely cited, which explains why clean examples are increasingly difficult to find. To cut weight everywhere else, Toyota used a magnesium steering wheel, hollow carpet fibers, a hollow rear wing, and brake cooling ducts derived directly from Formula One experience. The body was shaped in a wind tunnel. The drag coefficient came in at 0.31, lower than the Ferrari 456 GTA of the same year at 0.33. A Ferrari 355 cost $130,000 and was half a second faster. The A80 cost $39,000. That math settled the argument. Then in 2001, Brian O'Connor drove an orange one in The Fast and the Furious and beat a Ferrari on screen. The internet was young. The myth became permanent. For purists, the peak of the A80 generation isn't the standard car. It's the 1994 TRD 3000 GT built directly from the Supra that competed in the Japanese GT Championship and homologated for street use. Toyota Racing Development built this car, not Toyota Motor Corporation. The distinction matters. The body was 2 inches wider than the standard A80. Every hood vent was functional, engineered to dissipate heat from the engine bay under sustained high-speed running. The original sale price was the equivalent of approximately $120,000 USD in 1994. It was sold exclusively through TRD dealer networks in Japan, on a waiting list. You could not walk in and buy one. Total production, 35 complete cars. The Ferrari F40 had 1,315. TRD also sold the body and suspension kit separately, but the number of partial kit cars is unknown, which means the 35 complete units are the only number that can be verified. The TRD 3000 GT is rarer than a Ferrari F40. After 17 years without production, the Supra returned in 2019 as the A90. The announcement that the platform would be shared with the BMW Z4 G29 was the most controversial moment in the car's history. When the BMW partnership was confirmed publicly, used A80 prices dropped briefly before climbing to levels they've never come down from. The A90 and the Z4 share approximately 70% of their components. They do not drive the same. Gazoo Racing retuned the suspension geometry, steering response, and weight distribution independently. The result is a 50-50 front-rear weight split with a wheelbase of 97.2 inches, exactly 0.2 inches shorter than the A80. That 0.2 inches was engineered deliberately. Toyota's original plan was to use the 2GR FK's V6 engine, a naturally aspirated 3.5-liter already in production. The switch to BMW's B58 happened late in development when testing showed the V6 created too much front weight bias to achieve the 50-50 distribution target. The B58 is narrower and shorter, which solved the problem. The B58 produces 382 horsepower with a flat torque curve of 369 pound-feet from 1,800 RPM. The chassis torsional rigidity measures 2,200 Nm per degree. The Lexus LFA, built from carbon fiber, measured 2,100. The A90 is built from steel and is stiffer than a carbon fiber supercar. The exterior, called Condensed Extreme, originated from the FT1 concept drawn by Toyota's Calti studio in California in 2014. In 2023, Toyota launched a 6-speed manual version because enthusiasts complained long enough. The aftermarket has already pushed the B58 past 600 horsepower on stock internals. That number 600 on stock internals is the same argument the 2JZ made 30 years earlier. The engine is different. The story is identical. GRMN stands for Gazoo Racing Masters of Nürburgring. Every car that earns that badge has had to set a competitive lap time at the Nürburgring Nordschleife life. It is not a trim level, it is a performance qualification. The GR Yaris GRMN was limited to 500 units globally. The Supra GRMN is expected to follow a similar production constraint. The Supra GRMN will run BMW M Division's S58 engine, the same unit found in the M3 competition, which produces 503 horsepower from the factory. The GRMN version is expected to exceed that. Carbon fiber roof and hood panels. Pricing projections based on other GRMN models place it between $120,000 and $140,000 USD. Toyota has confirmed that the next Supra generation will be hybrid or fully electric. The GRMN is the last combustion Supra. From a stretched Celica built to answer the Nissan Z to 5 generations built around the same obsession, the limit of what a longitudinal inline-six can do.